Welcome back. I did not grow up in New York City. I am a boy from Kansas, the Great Plains, where the tall wheatgrass lays. So perhaps I am missing something in Bill Gates' most recent interview with Aaron Sorkin, where he says he's a little more reluctant to be taxed at $100 billion. He's happy to pay $20 billion, but if Elizabeth Warren or some other liberal Democratic candidate comes along and wants to tax $100 billion of his net worth, then he would have a problem with it. I'm paraphrasing, but that's roughly what he said. And people, a lot of my fellow class, I did not attend an Ivy League college or some prestigious New England school like many of my fellow media people and journalists did. So I don't know if I'm hardly in the same class. Like I said, I'm from Kansas. Nonetheless, the general response was interesting in my mind. Immediately, the blue check marks, my fellow blue check mark cartel, came out on Twitter and responded with some sardonic clapbacks towards Bill Gates, saying, well, we taxed you at $100 billion, or the government taxed you at $100 billion, Bill Gates. Your net worth is $106 billion. So that would still leave you with $6 billion. You can't live on $6 billion, you greedy Ebenezer, Mr. Burns figure. And to me, perhaps I'm missing something. Like I said, I'm just a country bumpkin. But to me, I think the situation's a little more complex. And I'd like to extend Bill Gates' mind and his ability to think about things complexly. He's probably thinking at things on a slightly higher level than, oh, I'll only have $6 billion left. Dang, I guess I can't fill up the private jet today. Man, I guess I'll just have to fly first class. I don't think Bill Gates is arguing he can't live on $6 billion a year. Perhaps I'm extrapolating, but most of his money, or his value, his resources, let's just imagine this $106 billion is indeed in liquid cash resources, and it's in a bank account that he can just pull out $1,000 bills with Ulysses S. Grant or Woodrow Wilson or whatever president is on that $1,000 bill that we print one of every year. Bill Gates gives roughly around, I think, $4.5 billion a year through his foundations and charity organizations to fight child poverty and child health, to provide vaccines to really remote places in Africa, to end child mortality, to raise dying mothers, out of malnourishment. His foundation does a lot of good, or at least attempts to, in a very methodical, calculated way. And if the government were to suddenly remove the bulk of his financial resources to do this, to funnel money into his foundational programs, his ability to do a lot of these philanthropic, if I can pronounce the word, endeavors would dry up. If he's spending at $4.5 billion a year, and he's only left with $6 billion, he's out in 18 months. All his programs towards Africa and providing vaccines and meals and hospitals is gone. And if we remove his ability, $6 billion still seems like a large sum of money, but the ability to have a large sum of money already accessible is a great tool to generate more money. And it's a kind of sad but true rule, but the more money you start with, the easier it is to create money. And you can see this all the time, even with just leveraged investing. If I put $1,000 into Apple stock and it goes up 100%, I've made $2,000. But as I'm pretty smart, and we're all pretty smart, right? Apple's going to go up. But if I had $100,000 and I put it in next to poor me, who only had $1,000 to put in, and it went up 100%, now I have $200,000. So exact same gamble, same premonition that Apple stock's going to go up. But because I had more money to begin with, I was just able to invest it that way, I made way more than the person that had less money to begin with. And this essentially, by ripping out that money from Bill Gates, perhaps I'm missing something. I am ultimately a country bumpkin, just a simple rube, that without his large amount of resources to continually refill the well in which he can use to pour cash into underdeveloped areas in Africa, part of his ability to do so is he has that large capital to begin with. And that capital that he's investing, he's Bill Gates, he's smart, is making him rather good returns. So just as much as he's able to push billions of dollars out, he's able to make it back up on the back end. if the government were to tax it and take it all away, an argument could be made that the government would perhaps not spend it as effectively and as methodically as Bill Gates is doing so on programs that benefit the world as a whole. The other half of this is that this idea that political candidates or governments have that much control over people that are that wealthy, I think shows at least a small ignorance towards history. That governments are not all powerful. They never were. And that money and riches on that scale, Bill Gates could avoid paying the $100 billion tax if he so chooses. He could just evacuate from the United States and set up shop in the United Kingdom or France or Singapore, wherever he wanted. And countries would tailor their tax brackets to them. They would be glad to see Bill Gates take his foundation to Singapore or Hong Kong or wherever you want. I don't think he'd like to do that. I think he'd prefer to stay in the United States, but he could outrun the United States government. He has vast resources to do so. And even then, rich people have always had a control on the U.S. government that I think we all wish to turn a blind eye to. For goodness sakes, J.P. Morgan was bailing out the U.S. government up until the Great Depression. All those recessions in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the United States government would have collapsed. Our economy would have collapsed if it was not for J.P. Morgan Chase the man and his own bank loaning money to the United States government. The U.S. didn't have any national bank. In fact, that was the catalyst for forming the Federal Reserve. Was the United States government said, man, our economy keeps crashing, and J.P. Morgan, this guy, keeps bailing out our country. This kind of gives, we're in a bad position. Thank you, J.P. Morgan. We appreciate you doing your civic duty here, but we really don't want one guy bailing out the United States government. Thus the creation of the Federal Reserve, among other reasons. But even during the American Revolutionary War, there was a man, this is a true story, when the Congress could no longer pay the Continental Army, George Washington's band of militiamen, it was Robert Morris, just a wealthy individual from Philadelphia, that funded the Continental Army out of his own bank account. So from the inception, the beautiful conception of our liberty land here in the United States, it's always been rich and wealthy individuals, one, having quite a bit of power within the United States government, but two, aiding and abetting the government for the greater good. Robert Morris, J.P. Morgan, Bill Gates. So to my mind, I think the argument is not that Bill Gates would only be left with $6 billion and thus he could only drive the Porsche to work and not the G6 jet, is not the argument. Is that I think to imagine it more complexly is that Bill Gates is worried that if the government were to simply drain him of all his capital, he would no longer be able to as effectively combat the initiatives, the World Health initiatives he has taken on in his organization, his foundation, and indeed he would no longer have the power to cajole other wealthy billionaires across the world, not just the United States, as Saudi Arabia and China and all these other countries industrialize and become wealthy with billionaires, to encourage and cajole by hook or crook these other billionaires to give up their sums of money to the greater good of the world and to reinvest it into health and literature and nourishment programs that benefit all of us collectively as a global society. Anyway, I don't know. These are just some complex thoughts from a country rube. If you found it interesting, or maybe agree with me a little bit, or disagree with me, tell me why. Leave a like. If you hated this video, leave a like. If you disliked this video, thanks for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.